My alarm wakes me at 5 every morning. I have 6 toddlers to get up, dressed and fed before taking them to school, and I'd better get going. My name is Pippa Jarvis. I live with my parents, 4 siblings, 13 adopted siblings, 12 foster babies, 4 full-time volunteers, and 5 permanent household staff. My mom, Thea, began a ministry in 1993 called the Love of Christ Ministries, or TLC, which takes in and cares for abandoned babies. For her, it was a calling from God, and it started when she visited hospitals and orphanages, and one day came back with 2 baby boys, Joshua and Ruel, now my wonderful, special 8-year-old brothers. My whole family fell in love with them and became totally involved in the ministry from the start. After that, we took babies in regularly and looked after them. Of course, my dad's salary was spreading more and more thinly as we took in more babies, and the little house we lived in at that time was eventually bursting at the seams, but we had become so devoted to the ministry we couldn't turn back. With the help of our church, and especially our priest, Father Barney, we were able to move into this spacious home on a plot south of Johannesburg. It was the answer to our prayers, because we desperately needed the space. We gradually acquired various farm animals, because my mom's dream was for the children to grow up in a nature-filled environment. She wanted our home to remain family-centered, despite the large numbers, and to have nothing of the typical orphanage connotation. TLC wasn't created to just be another institution and just another foster home. It was created to make and to produce people of value to society, where we can turn around in 20 years' time and say, look at what Joshua can do today. Today he is a great leader or a great teacher or even a great father. You know, we're not going to prescribe what they need to be, but they have to contribute. As the ministry developed, we realized we couldn't cover all the costs or do all the work by ourselves. Fundraising became a priority. Volunteers came on board, as did permanent staff, and eventually even this large house was constantly buzzing. My dad and my brother Reese are always the first to leave in the mornings. Reese is a great role model for the boys. He takes them to soccer and talks to them about boy things. My dad loves all the kids and is totally committed to the ministry.
Robin is a very generous person. He's a very fatherly person, so he fits in completely with the whole vision, because it was never something that I wanted to do on my own. It was a family thing, and he fits in there as the dad, and he fits in there. For the first 5 years, he was the provider completely, you know, and now everything's changed, so that we work together on the whole project.
These children began their lives in circumstances of utter hopelessness. Some were found on rubbish heaps, in drains, in toilets, in the veld, left to die by mothers too destitute and too desperate to see any other option. Others were just left to waste away in hospital cots, neglected by staff too busy to attend to their primary need for love and affection. We take these children into our home. We love them and care for them until some generous-hearted person claims them. Or we keep them, adopt them ourselves, and help them to become a part of our family and constructive members of society. Those who come to us are the lucky ones.
I've always believed that a newborn baby just is a package of potential. All it needs is somebody to help it to produce that potential at the end. But you're not going to get that out of them if you're not going to give them quality in the first place. So if you're going to just give them millipop and stick them in a dark room and think that that's going to do the job, it's not going to do the job. You need to give them an environment that they can flourish, and those things can come, that potential can come to the fore.
Here the ministry is picking up the brokenness, the babies who are abandoned, and that's a tremendous mission and ministry in itself.
We see them as noble children. We see them as really, royalty.
We're trying to instill in the children is three main concepts. The one is to be a leader, the one is to be a servant, and the other one is to be a friend. And if you can go through life being all three of those things, then you'll be a noble man, and that's what we want for our children. Last year, the three older boys went to a public school, but they were treated like orphans by the teachers. When we noticed their self-confidence waning, we decided to homeschool them. The last thing we wanted was for the values we had instilled in them to be eroded. My older sister Joanna teaches them in the old manager's cottage, which we converted into a school. As the little ones grow up and leave the excellent nursery school which all of us Jarvis children attended, they'll join Joshua, Ruel and Tommy here.
In the mornings we do like our group activities. I read from various literature books to them, and we do poetry, and then we do science and geography and stuff, reading and experiments and things. And then at about 11 o'clock they start doing their own work. They each do their own maths, their own grammar and their own reading, and Tommy does his own work. And then I just kind of go from child to child as they have a problem.
I had a suspicion all my life that God wanted me to do something like this, but I wasn't quite sure how to move into it. And then in 1990, when I went to Bible school, we started to be given opportunities to go into orphanages and that kind of thing. And when I saw again, the human tragedy that just occurs in the orphanages of children being abused, raped and sodomized on a daily basis, and all those terrible things, and it's happening here in our civilized country now. I tried to find help wherever I could. I went to the welfare and said this was happening, went to the churches and said this was happening, and nobody really wanted to take up the challenge, And I decided then the only way I was going to be able to do it is to do it in my own home and under my own control, so that I could give the children the quality that I wanted to give them.
What's needed, I feel, are more places like this. The model that we're working on is a family-orientated model. We don't want to build up an institution where kids will live in an institution. We want to feel that they grow up in a family atmosphere. They thrive here. That's why, thanks be to God, our death rate, in a sense, even though some of them are AIDS and HIV, is so low.
Yeah, this is one that we don't actually know too much about. The hospital phoned us probably about 10 days ago to say that there was a baby who had been left in the ward of the maternity unit, and that it was unlikely that the mother would return. We're assuming, because she was a full-term baby, the chances are she's negative, or she's only antibody positive and not actually virally positive. Increasing numbers of babies are being abandoned because the mother is dying of AIDS. And as time passes, increasing numbers of HIV-positive babies come to us. I sometimes see the AIDS epidemic as a tidal wave. It's approaching, and as it comes closer, it becomes larger and more threatening. A handful of astute people can see the wave and are warning others of it, but the rest turn their backs to it in the hope that it'll go away, which of course is impossible. It's never going to disappear. We must all face it and deal with it.
And the whole AIDS issue with the government is very, very sad, because it's almost like they're turning a blind eye, because I think they think it's not economically expedient to keep AIDS people alive, and so they're just squandering their lives for the sake of politics. That's what it looks like to me, because they really don't seem to care.
And it's a great tragedy when you take your baby to the hospital and they say, I'm sorry, there's no beds for this baby, or there's no staff to take care of this baby because we're short-staffed, or whatever. I mean, there's 101 excuses that the hospital has to give the patient because the government is keeping that money elsewhere.
I mean, for instance, there's welfare policy is that if you've got a child in foster care, you're not allowed to give them antiretroviral drugs, even if you pay for them. And of course I gave it to them anyway. I thought, well, they can lock me up. But I did feel like, well, then I'll just adopt them. And I came to that conclusion last year with Tommy when he was so very, very sick. And he nearly died. He was like within an inch of death. And I just sitting next to him, and I thought, I can't lose him. I can't lose him for the sake of money. It's just not fair.
The ethos doesn't change. Those children still deserve a quality of life, and as long as the quality is there, then we're happy. Tommy came very close to dying, and he completely lost that quality to his life. And the only way we could retain it or retrieve it was to put him on to triple therapy AZT. One of our biggest problems is a shortage of funds. We could do so much more if we had the resources. We recently received a lump sum from Nedcor to build a much-needed bathroom adjoining the nursery. It was becoming ridiculous, having to bath and dress 25 babies and children in my parents' room. As it is, they have so little privacy. This bathroom is going to make such a big difference to their lives. But there are always needs, and they all seem important. For example, we'd love to be able to build an infirmary on the property for sick babies. Those parents who've adopted TLC babies could bring them here when they get sick and receive not just professional health care, but also emotional support from a place that understands their needs.
We need a lot of money for ordinary running. You've got the cars to run, you've got in and out to the doctors, the hospitals, medicine. But we need the cash flow coming in on a regular basis. Not now big lumps of money, big sums of money. But if enough people were volunteering, 50, 100 rands a month or even less to have a regular cash flow, then we're in a good position. Well, this cottage is a miracle, really. If you can see it behind me there, we needed really accommodation for our volunteer workers rather than have them all jumbled together on sleeping bags in the house. And we fundraised for this particular place, and what's important for me is that some of the money, a good bit of the money actually, 25,000 rands came from the village at home, Pomeroy in County Tyrone, the north of Ireland. And the people there raised that through a dance and through other contributions that I got privately. And they raised that money and brought it out, and that was a big share in helping us to get this little place off the ground. And I'm so grateful to them. They're a wonderful bunch back home.
We always need volunteers to help us. I don't want to sound fussy or ungrateful, but what we need are the right kind of volunteers. It's no use someone coming now and then when they have a bit of free time. We need people who are prepared to give a firm commitment to the ministry for, say, 3 months full-time, or alternatively once a week for at least a year. It's a very exciting opportunity for young people and for people who are wanting to take a little bit of time off from their day-to-day lives, just to give a little bit back to humankind.
Well, I wanted to take a year off before going to college, and I wanted to do something to help someone, some kind of missionary work. So I looked into YWAM, Youth with a Mission, and I looked into the Mercy Ships. But then when I stumbled upon TLC's website, I had to come here. So when I told my mom, she wouldn't let me go. She thought it was ridiculous coming to Africa, so far away.
I was still searching for my life because I didn't know what God wants me to do. And then now I found, I am secure, and then I love the place, and I think this is where God wants me to be. I'm glad about this. It's very wonderful to be here.
These babies, I always have a sense they have really nobody else. You always think of a newborn baby as surrounded by family and people interested and, great excitement about this new arrival. And with these babies, you feel they're they have in a sense been thrown on our mercy. They don't have anybody else except whoever chooses to care for them.
I'm going to quote from what Thea says. When I arrived in, I asked Thea, and she says, well, I'm doing my little bit. And I think she's doing a big part in the community. It's like, for her, she thinks it's just a molecule, it's just a tiny bit, but I think she's doing a really big job.
I just have so much respect for Thea and her family, and I don't think anybody could just do it. It's really challenging, but I think that's what she's been called for. It's amazing. It really touches my heart when I see it. She's an awesome mother.
They take children like Frances and just totally bring her all the way around. When she first came here, she didn't make any noise at all. She didn't even cry, and now she's strong. She's starting to sit by herself now, and she's eating and keeping it down. It's just amazing what happens with a little bit of love and care.
If there were no places like this, especially this one, perhaps all these kids, I wonder where would they be? Perhaps all of them have died, or I don't know, ended up where.
From my point of view, I think that until I came here, AIDS was something obviously everybody is becoming very well aware of, and it was very much a matter of statistics. But I think having watched a baby die of AIDS, it'll never again be a statistic or just a disease to learn more about. It has taken on a huge reality for me.
I'm trying not to become attached to the children, but it's hard because they don't ask for anything. All they ask for is your love, and it's so easy just to fall in love with them.
It takes a lot out of me, but I also receive so much from children.
I would love to see some of the kids getting adopted, or we get people coming to get kids, like, can I take this boy for 2 days or so, and the kids enjoy it, and they get guests coming to pick them up and hold them, because they just miss this love from mother or from a dad.
Well, my wife came out here to visit the babies once or twice, and then decided that she'd like to foster a baby, and the next thing I knew, Jessica was at home. She was 6 weeks old when we got her, and a few months later my wife came to do a night shift here, look after the babies, and the next morning came home with Jonathan. And he was 6 months old at the time, and they're both now about 1.5 years old. So
we started out with, it would have just been short term, and till they could find somewhere to place her. And then within the first week, when she woke up in the night crying, I'd got up and I'd hold her against me and, just sing to her, And the one night I was singing to her that Jesus loves her, and I started crying. And then I just realized, that God adopted us into his family, to become part of the family. And that's what he wanted us to do with Jessica, was to make her part of the family, so she can belong. And that's why the name Jessica Desiree, because Jessica means God's gracious gift, and Desiree means the desired one. So I kept on saying to her, she's not the abandoned one, she's the desired one. And then I spoke to my family, and we all decided that it was a good idea to adopt her.
Hey Angus, say hello Auntie Thea. Angus, look at Auntie Thea, say hello.
Hello Auntie Thea. You don't even remember me.
No.
The old so-and-so.
Yeah.
So how's it going with him?
Very well, he's beautiful. He's talking a bit and he's walking well. And Daddy's madly in love with him, and so is the brothers and the sister. Yeah.
So then, when are you going to have your next one?
I thought you didn't want me to have any more.
Well, now that you're adopting him, things have changed.
We'll see. Let him grow up. I want to enjoy him. But don't you think he looks like me?
He did. Same smile.
That's the same fat cheeks. Hey.
So many of these babies are HIV positive at birth. But if they are loved and cared for, over 80% of them will turn HIV negative.
Yes.
Whereas if they are just left in homes and institutions, those children will die.
Yeah, with the way that AIDS is going, we're not only getting babies who are dying of AIDS, we're getting babies who, what we call, are AIDS affected as opposed to AIDS infected. And these are children who are healthy but who are now orphaned. So we really are striving to find families to come forward and say, we will take a child, we can make an extra space and we can afford to create another opportunity for a child to live.
Oh gosh, look at this. Hello.
In the 8 years of TLC's existence, only 8 babies have died. We've placed 220 babies with families, many of whom were HIV positive when they were adopted. Only 10 have not been taken by anyone, so we adopted them ourselves.
We like to see when the baby is growing up because he starts looking after the baby when he was little. It's a little baby now. When you're growing up, you want to see what's happening about the children.
I'm working in the kitchen, I'm cooking, and I'm cleaning the kitchen. I'm feeding the kids, the toddlers. Sometimes I used to help at night for a shift. I used to do 8 o'clock until 1 o'clock shift.
My job is to clean the whole yard, pumping the water, feeding the horses, pigs, all ducks, or everything around on the yard like animals. Me and Bernard, we feed them and keep the grass clean so the kids they can play.
About a year ago, some orphaned children from nearby squatter camps came to us asking for food. We couldn't turn them away. You can't be responsive to the needs of one group and then deny the needs of another group that's just as desperate. The next day a few more came, and so it went until a few dozen were coming each day. We had to formalize the feeding of these children, so when Bill offered to help us, we welcomed him.
My ministry is actually feeding the hungry, and we were fortunate enough to come into contact with this magnificent ministry here by sheer fluke, and that was over a year ago. And I must say that the blessings get better and better the more I'm associated with the Love of Christ Ministries and Thea Jarvis and her family.
Nowadays we feed an average of 400 to 500 children and young mothers once a week.
I think, I tell you from my heart, I think it's so sad, because when I look at just the children that we feed here, I mean, they are hungry little children, and I'm just a person just doing what I can. It's much too little, that can be done, but I'm doing it with a point of view, humanity, the world is cruel and miserable out there, and God's given me a small little bit of humanity that I can maybe just embrace and keep safe and do what I can for, But the government can do so much more if they really just had a heart. When I see of all the money that they waste on silly things, even in welfares, there's so much more that they can do.
We've come an awful long way from that little 2-bedroomed house or 3-bedroomed house where we were before we got here. And I can only think that this ministry has really been blessed by God. It's been anointed from day one. It just has gone so well that it must really be receiving a blessing from the Lord.
Each day we make the decision to put in as much quality into the children as possible. We give them the best opportunities, and we know they're going to be great people. And knowing that we had a hand in that gives us all the motivation we need to keep on going. However, we're always aware of the many thousands of babies and children who are not so lucky. A day here is long, it's hectic, it's exhausting, but it's also so rewarding for me to know that I've made a difference in these children's lives. Even though I don't receive a salary, I wouldn't change my job for any other in the world, because I am also one of the lucky ones.